are some sins, I think, because our culture sees them as sins, we feel a lot of freedom to condemn. But others, because the culture doesn't see as sins, we don't. And so, I was thinking of the Biola Underground statement. Imagine, though, if there was the Biola Racist Underground. And I'm just replacing some of their words. We thank you for your timely response. This is what they put on the website. Our racist identities, which are integral to who we are being questioned in terms of their morality. The university's upcoming decision will affect our daily lives, education, and consequently our financial security. And just imagine if they say things like, Biola claims to want dialogue, however, unless racist students who don't view racism as sinful were allowed to speak openly without threat. And so, and you could go on, but it's interesting. I think we all would feel a lot of freedom to say racism's wrong and it won't be tolerated here. Right? But we feel far less freedom in sins that our culture doesn't see as sinful to be as strong in. And so what I don't want us to do in the midst of being kind and no self-righteousness and loving is to lack the biblical backbone, because our culture will consider us bigots, to stand up for something that's consistently being a line drawn in the sand for what Christians will tolerate and what we won't. And so it's interesting to me how we often take cues from our culture in the sin we're allowed to speak out against, or the ones we're not.
Why is there no Christian pro-gay party represented on this panel?
Because we think it's sin. I wouldn't want a pro-racist person on this panel if the question were on racism. I wouldn't want someone advocating, proclaiming, talking about the goodness of racism or of lying. This is a fascinating sin in our culture. There is no other sin I know of that has parades celebrating it. And days at Disneyland. Can you imagine having Dishonesty Day at Disneyland? It's fascinating the cultural phenomenon this has become. And the way in 30 years, I think, there's been this massive shift. And so I am not concerned about giving more voice to something that seems like a tidal wave in opposition to the way God has designed things. We're not unclear on what we think the Bible teaches and what God has designed. And at Biola, we want to proclaim biblical truth. And so I wouldn't want something proclaiming lies or untruth, which is ultimately very unloving to do. We want to be loving, and to propagate lies is profoundly unloving.